Today, I'm calling out 8 sewing machine sins that are ruining your sewing. And I want you to keep a mental tally as we go, because I have seen enough sewing machines on this workbench to know that almost every one of you is committing at least one of these sins, if not more. And I'll go first. I have committed every single one of these sins on this list before I knew any better. If you're new here, I'm Lisa. I run Seamswell, my sewing machine service business here in Metro Detroit. I started as a hobbyist sewist and quilter, and I was out there committing all the sins before I decided to dedicate myself to learning how these machines actually work. And now I see the same mistakes being made week after week from people who've been sewing for 6 months and people who've been sewing for 60 years. Because here's the truth, most of the time, when we think the machine is doing something wrong, it's usually actually us. Yeah, hi, I'm the problem. It's me. And most of these mistakes we're making, it's because we were never taught the right way. Or we just don't like reading our user manuals. And I want to be clear here, I am not the sewing police. There is not a right way to press a seam or only one correct method to sew on your quilt binding. Sew however you want to sew. That's all you. But machine mechanics aren't a matter of just personal preference. The sins on this list are not technique choices. They are a list of sewing machine habits that may be actually working against you. I'm talking causing tension issues or thread jams or things that can do real damage to your machine. So gather around, my sewing friends. It is time to learn the error of our ways so that we may confess, repent, and sew better. Sin number 1, and I am speaking from very personal experience here, is turning the hand wheel away from you. Now, I used to do this all the time, and I genuinely did not know it was even a problem. I could not figure out why my thread kept tangling and jamming up around my bobbin case. So what's going on here? Well, your machine expects the thread to travel in a very specific direction. And that path requires the hand wheel to turn towards you. So if you're sitting on the side of the machine, the hand wheel is turning towards you. And when you do that, everything is moving the way it was designed to. But when you turn it away from you, that bobbin thread gets confused in the bobbin mechanism, and you're going to end up with a tangled mess. Now, some machines may tolerate this better than others, but if you are regularly dealing with thread that bunches up in the bobbin area, will sort of wrap around the bobbin case and jam up, and you just cannot figure out why it's doing this, I can almost guarantee the hand wheel is your culprit. Here's when it usually happens. So you'll be sewing and you'll get to the end of a seam, and the needle goes just a little bit further than what you wanted. And when you stop, the needle may be in the down position. And so your temptation is to lift that needle by turning the hand wheel away from you to back up the stitch. But when you are doing that, that thread, just as I described, is going in the wrong direction, and the machine does not like that. And in most cases, that thread is going to get caught and start bunching up. So the fix to this is simple, which is simply to make sure you are always turning the hand wheel towards you. Yes, even to raise the needle, even if that makes making one extra stitch beyond where you'd hope to stop. And I get it, if this is a deeply ingrained habit, it can be a hard one to break. It took me quite some time, even after I learned what I was doing wrong. So give yourself some grace, but now you know what's going wrong. This next one is shockingly common, but there is a good chance that you're using the wrong bobbin. If you are regularly dealing with threads that keep breaking or bunching up in the bobbin area, or maybe you're getting skip stitches, uneven tension, I need you to check your bobbin. There are over 80 different bobbin styles on the market. 80. And your machine is calibrated for exactly one of them. So maybe you have multiple machines, or you've picked up a pack of the pre-wound bobbins off the rack because they look close enough. That could be your problem right there. Just because it fits in your machine does not mean it's the right fit for your machine. Bobbins are not typically interchangeable across brands, and not even across different models of the same brand. So a bobbin that's even just a couple millimeters too big can create drag that will impact your tension. And one that's too small can start to like wobble and it'll cause the thread to kind of spin out and bunch up underneath your fabric. And materials matter too. A size 15 plastic bobbin is not the same as a size 15 metal bobbin. That size number is a shape standard, but it's not a strict spec. And plastic and metal are rarely interchangeable in practice. Some machines may tolerate it, but some machines are specifically calibrated for one material or the other, and swapping them out can cause problems. All right, so how do you figure out which bobbin is correct for your machine? Well, start with your user manual. Got to check there first. That said, I have noticed that a lot of the modern manuals don't always specify the specific bobbin type, which is very frustrating. So if yours doesn't, a great resource I use often is referencing a website called Sewing Parts Online. They sell sewing parts, but right on the homepage, you can enter your machine's make and model, and then you're going to look at the drop-down list. There's a drop-down item for plastic bobbins and for metal bobbins. Unfortunately, they don't just have a category called bobbins, so you do kind of need to check in both spots. But if you search those, it will return the correct results for your machine. That said, go ahead, open up the product page for the specific bobbins, and it will actually list out all of the models that are supported with that bobbin style. So confirm your specific make and model is listed there. And if you have multiple machines, do yourself a favor, keep your bobbins sorted and labeled by machine. Your future self will thank you. Speaking of bobbins, sin number 3 is threading the bobbin the wrong way. Having the right bobbin is important, but it will do you no good if you are putting it in wrong. If your bobbin is going in the wrong direction, that bobbin tension is not going to be correct, which is going to lead to skip stitches, nesting looping threads, or thread that is breaking constantly. Now, here's a tip to remember how to insert your bobbin correctly. I have used this for years and I will never forget it. But if you hold your bobbin up with the thread hanging down, it should make the shape of the letter P. So the thread hangs down on the left side. That's the stem of the P. And your bobbin is the round part. And the way I remember this is simply P for perfect stitches. So every time you load your bobbin, think perfect stitches. Remember that it needs to look like a P. And that is how you insert your thread into the bobbin. All right, so important note here, bobbin direction is not universal. So the tip I just gave applies to most modern machines, but it can vary. So don't forget to check your user manual, or often there is a threading diagram printed right on the needle plate cover. All right, sin number 4, and as a repair tech, this is the one that genuinely breaks my heart, but so many people skip doing any sort of sewing machine maintenance. I get it. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind. You can't actually see what's happening under these covers. But if you are never clearing out at least that bobbin area or giving your machine an occasional drop of oil, that lint buildup is actively impacting your stitch quality right now and setting up your machine for compounding issues down the road. Let's take a closer look. So this lint that builds up in the hook area where your bobbin case sits, that lint starts creating unnecessary drag. And this can impact the thread as it circles the case. And when there's enough lint buildup, it can actually cause the bobbin case to like bounce around and just not glide as smoothly as it really needs to. And tension that can seem impossible to fix because no amount of dial turning is going to fix a lint problem. And if you ignore it for long enough, that lint, along with the old dried out lubricant, is going to cause the machine to get increasingly sluggish. Your performance is just going to go down overall. And eventually it can completely seize up the machine, meaning the gears and the hand wheel won't actually turn. They feel a lot of resistance and the controls may just freeze up and not work. And now you're looking at potentially a major repair and waiting for your machine for weeks or months while it's in the shop. Now, sewing machines are designed for regular professional service. Typically, every year, you could probably stretch it to 2 years in a lot of cases, but there's also a lot you can do at home to keep your machine running its best. Now, if you don't have a home maintenance routine yet, I do have a free resource called the Clean Machine Toolkit. This will walk you through exactly how to clean and maintain your machine at home between those professional service appointments. I will have that linked in the description, so go ahead and grab your copy. By the way, if this video has been helpful so far, I do hope you will consider hitting subscribe so that you don't miss any of my next videos on mastering your sewing machine. Now keep watching, because this next mistake is actually the number one reason people think their machine is broken when it absolutely is not. This one is something that even the best intentioned sewists will run into from time to time, and that is threading the machine incorrectly. Now, this Janome right here, which was actually my very first sewing machine, and it's still my main machine that I use to this day, I threaded this incorrectly for a really long time. So basically what I was doing when I was threading it was I was going through the wrong thread guide. I was putting my upper thread through this tension guide, which is actually meant for when you are threading the bobbin. This one is not used when you are threading your upper thread. The thread actually is supposed to catch behind. There's a little thread guide at the back here that it's supposed to catch through. And I don't know how or why, but I started doing it wrong and then was frustrated when I was constantly losing tension in my upper thread. The thread would pop out of this upper guide because it wasn't where it was supposed to be. And I did not realize for very long that this simple threading issue was causing me a lot of heartache. But I know I'm not the only person who has made that mistake, because in fact, I had a client just a few weeks ago who had a similar Janome and had been doing the same threading mistake for quite some time as well. So if some of you may be having an aha moment right now, just know you're not alone. So as common as threading issues are, I want to give you a few universal threading rules that will apply to every single sewing machine, regardless of brand or model. So rule 1 is your presser foot must be up while you thread. Raising the presser foot physically opens the tension discs inside the machine, which will allow your thread to fall between them and get the correct amount of pressure applied. But if your presser foot is down, those discs stay closed and the thread is never going to get where it needs to go, and you will never have correct upper tension. Rule 2, you must hit every single thread guide in order without skipping any. I don't care if it looks like you can shortcut it, you can't. If there's a guide, your thread goes through it. One that gets missed a lot is the guide just above the needle. Don't skip that one. It really is necessary. Then rule 3, your thread actually needs to get into the take-up lever. So this piece that goes up and down as you sew, that's your take-up lever. And a lot of times the thread won't get all the way into the little hole in the take-up lever. Not gonna work. Absolutely need to get that thread into the take-up lever. And here's a simple test to check your work and make sure your thread is actually properly threaded. So after you thread it with the presser foot up, we're going to drop that presser foot and then gently tug the upper thread. And you should feel clear resistance here. It should not slide through really easily. If it does pull right through, that means you've missed something and you should rethread it completely. And if you are getting loops on the bottom of your fabric or thread nesting, 9 times out of 10, that's why. Rethread your machine. Now, I'm not going to deep dive into troubleshooting tension problems in this video, but if you think that's what you are dealing with, I do have 2 complete videos on that topic, which I will leave linked as well. Sin number 6, and I know we talk about this one often, but when did you last change your needle? Needles dull after roughly every 8 to 10 hours of sewing time. Even if they look fine, even if you touch the tip and it still feels sharp, needles dull. They bend and warp with use, and you cannot tell just by looking at them or feeling them. A needle that appears perfectly straight can be warped just enough to mimic or cause much bigger problems. We're talking skip stitches, thread breaks, and tension issues that no amount of adjusting is going to fix. And the biggest threat of a dull needle is actually that it's much more likely to strike your bobbin case or your hook race. And while broken needles are no fun, that's actually just a minor inconvenience compared to the real damage that a needle strike can cause. It can actually shift some of those precisely calibrated parts out of position just enough that it's going to throw off your machine's timing, meaning the needle is no longer going to meet the bobbin thread at the exact right moment it needs to, that's going to allow it to pick up the thread and form a stitch. And timing issues are not a DIY fix and often not a cheap repair. So please change your needle regularly. Which brings me to sin number 7, because changing your needle means nothing if you're not using the right one. The type of needle you use matters just as much as the condition of the needle. If you are using a sharp point needle, which is what most standard universal needles are, and you're sewing on a knit or a stretch fabric, you're going to get skip stitches or possibly no stitches forming at all. And it can be a scary moment. You might think something has gone very wrong with your machine, but it's not the machine, it's the needle. So before you touch your tension dials or call the repair shop, make sure you've got the right needle for the job. The simple advice here is that you must use a ballpoint or stretch needle for knits and stretch fabrics. And if you're sewing on woven fabrics like quilting cotton, that's when you're going to want to use a sharp or a microtex needle. I personally have been a fan of Schmetz for many years, consistently reliable, widely available. And they actually have some really great resources on their website. So if you need help finding the right needle for your project, definitely recommend checking out those resources. I'll be sure to leave a link in the description as well. And for our last sewing sin, please stop pushing or pulling your fabric through your machine. So your feed dogs, those are the little teeth under the presser foot. Those are designed to move your fabric along at like the exact correct pace. And your job as this sewer is to guide the fabric gently. That's it. We are not pushing the fabric. We are not pulling it. We are not trying to make it go faster, just guiding it. And when you push or pull, you're putting lateral stress on the needle. And that is causing the needle to like bend out of position, again, putting it at high risk of striking the bobbin case or the hook. Now, if you are consistently fighting your fabric, if it's not feeding smoothly and maybe you feel like you have to muscle it through, that's usually a signal that something else needs attention. It could be as simple as adjusting the pressure on your presser foot, or it could be your machine's due for service. But the answer is never to force it through the machine. One thing that really helps a lot when you're working with thick fabrics or bulky seams is a walking foot. I have mine on my machine right here. I use this all the time, especially when I'm quilting through multiple layers. And another option is to use a bulky seam jumper. This is a very simple tool that's going to help your presser foot level out when it's crossing over thick layers so that the feed dogs can actually do their job properly. And of course, I will leave a link to both of those and all of the other resources I mention in the description of this video. So there you go, 8 sewing machine sins. And now that you know what they are, you are officially absolved. So how many of these are you guilty of? I would love to hear your confession in the comments. If you want more sewing machine love in your feed, I hope you will hit subscribe. And if you haven't grabbed a copy of the Clean Machine Toolkit yet, go ahead and do that. Again, it's completely free. It is a great first step towards keeping your machine running the way it should. As always, thanks for joining, keep on sewing, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.